All right. Hey there. Hope you're popping in to hear how it's going a year after 25 pounds of menopause weight loss. Or actually, it was 25 pounds of weight loss after 25 pounds of menopause weight gain because I had to gain it before I could lose it. Right. So I really wanted to hop on and tell you how it's going. It has been almost a year since I kind of reached a maintenance weight or goal weight for some menopause weight gain that I had accomplished in my defense during a really chaotic time of life. It was good chaos, some of it, not good chaos, some of it, but it was a very chaotic time of life. And I found myself as a lifestyle medicine doctor, no lack of knowledge here. This was not I need a handout about what to eat, but I found myself 25 to 30 pounds overweight with lab work that I was really, really not happy with. So I've talked about that in some previous videos, and I even have a handout about all of the things that I did, but I'll come back to that. I really wanted to share with you how it's going and also talk a little bit about how I've been able to keep it off. And let me just tell you that it's not willpower. I discovered something pretty brutal about myself, which is that I don't have any willpower. I have really what I consider to be, floundering average or below average willpower. And I still have managed to pull this off. So I want to share that with you today. So, hope you are having a good Monday and looking forward to making this a routine thing on Mondays, going live at noon. So, if you have watched my previous video about how I initially lost 25 pounds after menopause at age 53 ish when I started this journey, this is a follow up to that and how it's going about a year later. All right. So I'm going to walk through some of the things that I did and kind of tell you what stuck, what has sort of drifted off, and what am I still doing? And am I white knuckling it? Does it feel hard that I am able to keep this off? Because as I mentioned, I am not a mountain of willpower over here. That's one thing that people, I think, is a really big misconception is that if you're a lifestyle or a health professional, that this is easier somehow. And it is true, to be honest, that having a lot of knowledge helps. But man, at the end of the day, at 4 p.m., I am a feral animal up in my pantry, just like a lot of other women and patients and clients who've talked to me and said, what happens to me at 4 o'clock? I'm so good, or I'm on the wagon until 4, and then I just hit the wall. And yes, I am you also. And somehow I've still been able to cobble together a life that actually makes this work. So here we are, 1 year follow up after 25 pounds of menopause weight loss. And I just want to tell you how it's going. So, first of all, let's just talk in general about effort. Does this feel hard? And do I feel like I'm trying? So, this is a great miracle. I'm not even sure I could have predicted this. I don't really feel like I'm trying. I feel like I've achieved the holy grail of how we want to feel, getting the health outcomes that we want in life, which is I do still have to be aware. I can't just let my brain off the chain 24/7 and eat everything I want at any time that I want and any amount that I want. But I seem to have reached this incredible balance of my mental state, my emotional state, and how I can regulate my emotions, and also setting up my environment in such a way that I don't actually feel like I'm white knuckling. I am an anti white knuckle plan. It doesn't work, to be honest. We mostly know that, which is why we keep asking ourselves, why can't I do this and keep it off, right? So strangely, I don't feel like I'm trying that hard. Second, that's not to say, however, that there hasn't been some variation and kind of a windy road. And that's because of something very natural called habit drift. What is habit drift? Habit drift is when you do something and it feels amazing and you know it's good for you and you're in a new habit and you think, I have conquered this. This is the new me. I am now this girl who exercises every morning at 6 and who doesn't like chips or chocolate or whatever. By the way, I'm not her ever now or ever probably. But habit drift is the tendency of the human brain to always want to go back to what is easy, what feels good, and what uses very little energy. So, yes, despite the fact that I achieved weight loss, that I have plenty of knowledge, I'm still a human over here. And I also have habit drift. So, as I'm going through some of the habits that I did to originally lose this weight, I'll tell you a few areas where drift has occurred, where I just feel myself gradually falling off. And then I have to go, wait, wait, wait. I really, really want to keep that habit. Let me figure out how to keep that. So, habit drift is normal. And if I can send you home with anything, please take this. Habit drift is not failure. Drifting back to something that's easier or that feels good, and the phraseology that everybody uses is off the wagon. And I keep telling my patients and my clients, just forget that. There is no wagon. It's all the wagon. All of it is the wagon. The days where you feel yourself drifting off and the days where you feel yourself locked in, it's all the wagon. So, yes, I've drifted on stuff and I've had to either let it go or figure out how to bring it back. Cool, right? Okay. In general, my overall weight loss and lab work. So I started out, and I'm not going to give you a number because I did that once before. I'm not embarrassed at all about the numbers, but I was told by some very, very close people that it was a little triggering. And I can completely see that. So let's just leave it at my body mass index, which is not a perfect measurement, but it's kind of what we have, was above what I wanted it to be. It was above 25, and 25 is the ballpark of in medicine where we consider it to be high risk for future disease or lower risk for future disease. So my goal was really, I wanted my body mass index to be below 25. And I managed to accomplish that. My body mass index is now 22. So I was able to lose, at the most, when I was at the low, I was at 30 pounds. I was involved in this online workout challenge. I really love lifting weights, but I'd sort of drifted off of that. So I joined this challenge and I got all back into it, and I was lifting weights like 4 times a week. It was amazing. And I was being pretty careful, a little more careful with what I was eating. And it felt terrific. Not something that I can probably sustain forever. So right now I have hovered out at about 25 to 27 pounds of overall weight loss. And I'm really, really happy with that. But even more than the scale, God, let me just hammer this into you. Even more than the scale is that I have energy that I didn't have before, that I feel physically good in my body and the way I'm moving through the world, that I can accomplish more. But my lab work improved dramatically. So when I first started this whole thing, the main thing that tipped me off was my hemoglobin A1C. Now, as an internal medicine doctor who's taken care of so many people with diabetes and high blood pressure and heart disease, I really understand the long-term consequences of diabetes. And we do know that if you are pre-diabetic, which means that your hemoglobin A1C is up to 5.6, then you've got a chance of becoming actually diagnosed with diabetes later on. So this really lit a fire under me. I was like, okay, I don't want that. This is now the time to begin to reverse this trend. So I had one reading that was 5.6. I went and had it done again a little bit later, and it was 5.7, which is pre-diabetic. I was like, that's it. I'm whipping this into shape right now. So that is what began this deep dive. Now I'm at 5.2. I'm thrilled with that. Super, super happy with that hemoglobin A1C. So that's kind of my journey with the lab work. Let's talk about weightlifting intensity, which is something that experienced some habit drift. So when I was doing this 4 times a week weightlifting challenge with a group online, it was super motivating. It was super fun. And lest you are concerned that you will bulk up or get bowed up with weightlifting, contraire, sister, you are not going to get bowed up with weightlifting. In fact, lifting weights, it feels like you've been shrink wrapped, just like your body tightens up. And I definitely saw that even with no change of the scale. When I stopped that 4 time a week weightlifting challenge and went back to my sort of normal 2 to 3 times a week for 30 minutes, I did notice a change in my shape, especially my lower body, even though the scale didn't change. So that's interesting, right? It's no failure, no harm here. I'm still feel good. I feel strong, but I definitely am motivated to get back in the gym and increase that intensity again, but mainly just because it feels amazeballs. It feels so good to lift heavy stuff. I think there's something primitive or primal about it. Endorphins get released. And we know that building muscle is just one of the most metabolically powerful things you can do. Your muscle tissue is like its own metabolism organ. So, definitely haven't stopped lifting weights, but habit drift occurred and I've kind of like brought it back a little bit. So I'm back into that routine. What else? Protein. Okay, this is so funny because I've done a 180-degree on my professional opinion about, okay, maybe not a 180, but I mean, it's different than it used to be. I've done a shift for sure. Probably a decade ago, I was very much, you know, not as on board with the emphasis of the need for protein in our regular midlife American diet. I knew that eating a whole food, plant strong diet, I got lots and lots of good, healthy protein in plant-based sources like tofu and tempeh and bone. That was hilarious. Not bones. I was a vegan. I wasn't eating bones. Tofu and tempeh and beans. Good luck eating bones anyway, right? With your teeth, but beans and lots of non-animal sources of protein. I didn't really think about protein, to be honest. That was 10 years ago, and a lot has happened since then. And one of the main things that's happened is menopause, which metabolically threw me for a complete loop. I was like, what the heck? I honestly feel like I had to burn the playbook of what I used to think was going to work. If you are perimenopausal or postmenopausal, you too may be thinking to yourself, I'm doing the same stuff I used to do and nothing's working. And sometimes we have to go back and realize that through menopause, our metabolism does actually change. We lose estrogen, and therefore we are more prone to insulin resistance and storing visceral fat around our belly, which leads to a little more inflammation. And I won't go into all of that, although I love to geek out talking about midlife metabolism. But I did realize that there were two main reasons that I chose to emphasize protein in my diet. One of those was emerging science and data that I learned more and more over the past decade that as I was going through menopause, my muscle mass is decreasing. It's like melting off your bones and it's taking with it some of your metabolic strength or your robustness of your metabolism and your ability to kind of burn up calories when you're just hanging out, sitting around. So that's one reason was to help me maintain my current muscle mass. But the second one, and this really became more and more evident the more I tinkered around and experimented with it, is that protein is actually a powerful appetite control tool. It's a powerful appetite control tool. Now, I never actually qualified for a GLP-1. I am actually professionally a fan of GLP-1s, but protein in adequate amounts helps my body stimulate its own GLP-1. Now, I am not comparing my body's own GLP-1 with being the equivalent of like taking a GLP-1 agonist. So please don't take that away from this. But your body does make its own. And so I thought, well, if there's something that I can tinker with my diet to make my body's own appetite control mechanisms kick in, and if it's safe, what is that thing? And one of those is protein. So my personal goal for my own self is anywhere from 1 to about 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight per day. And that's ideal body weight, not current body weight. Again, this is something that everybody needs to clear with their healthcare professional or your registered dietitian or your nutritionist. That is not a blanket health recommendation for everyone. But for me and my personal medical situation, that worked out to be safe. There's definitely no shadow of a doubt that when I am eating adequate protein, my cravings and my appetite are much more kind of like in control. Like I feel like I'm doing the thing, right? So that is a big change from what I used to think professionally. And now I have kind of come full circle on that. And then the second thing that I'm still using to control appetite is dietary protein with a dietary supplement. So again, just so much good evidence for high, did I say protein again? I meant fiber. For diets that are adequate in fiber for gut health, for inflammation, and for satiety and to control appetite. So these are two things that are powerful appetite control tools: dietary protein and fiber with a fiber supplement if your healthcare provider says it's fine for you. So still doing those. But as I was talking earlier about habit drift is that thing where like you're doing so good and then for reasons that you don't even know why, you just start like falling off, right? Exact same thing happened to me with a fiber supplement. So had to really keep tweaking. Okay, I keep forgetting to take it. Let me put it in front of the coffee machine. Okay, well, I keep forgetting to take it there. Let me put it by my toothbrush. Okay, well, now that's working for a while until it wasn't. Well, now let me move it back and put it in front of the coffee machine. I just have to keep tweaking the environment to keep doing the thing. And that is not failure. That is normal. That's normal humaning. So, next, time restricted eating. That's another thing I tinkered around with, which again is hilarious because I can't tell you as a doctor how many times I told people, don't skip breakfast. That's a terrible way to lose weight. It's actually okay if you don't have a history of extremely over restrictive eating disorders. And what I mean by that is an actual medical diagnosis of an eating disorder. The vast majority of us who were raised, especially female, in the civilized world, if you're a child of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, you probably have what I call garden variety disordered eating, which is the lifelong cycle of dieting and re-dieting and re-dieting. Can I hear, right? Been there, done that. But you may not have a medical diagnosis, right? Of bulimia or anorexia or binge eating disorder, but you can still have disordered relationships with food, which of course I have being raised here in the States. So time restricted eating is simply one of several different ways we can put a little bit of boundaries on our appetite and our primitive brain to help control our energy intake. So for me, what I found was that the less times I belly up to a plate every day, the easier it is for me to eat the right amount of energy for my body every day. It's just easier if I just don't go in the kitchen. Here's one thing that's unique about me. I have not had a diagnosis of an eating disorder. I am not starving in the morning, and I am not an advocate of white knuckling it through hunger. That's actually a recipe to overeat later on. What I found by experimenting was I'm actually just really not that naturally hungry in the morning. It wasn't an effort even really to kind of start pushing breakfast a little further and a little further and a little further till now my first meal of the day is about anytime between 11 a.m. and 12:30. Again, may or may not be right for you. Talk to your healthcare provider. But studies do show that aside from whether or not you agree with a lot of the other proposed benefits of fasting, and I have tried multi-day fasting and I was an epic fail. I mean, F minus on multi-day fasting. I just couldn't do it. Lots of people can do it. And they're like, well, you didn't do it right. And I'm like, I know, you're better than me. Is that what you want to hear? I don't even care if I'm good at being a faster. I have no desire to jump out of a plane either. And so, but what I am pretty good at is skipping breakfast most days of the week. I just found that it does not, in fact, trigger me to eat more later in the day, which a lot of people say it does trigger them to eat more, but it didn't me. I'm definitely still doing that. I do find that during weeks when I exercise more, that my appetite is a little bit more and I'm more likely to get hungry in the morning. My favorite mid-morning is a little handful of nuts and a banana. That is my favorite breakfast if I'm going to have one, because I usually just don't have time to fool with more than that, or I don't make time to fool with more than that. So I'm still doing time restricted eating. What about sugar and flour? I believe that that was one of the boundaries that I put on myself when I decided to improve my metabolic health. It has stuck, and I think that there's a few reasons why it has stuck. Let me blanket say that from a biology standpoint and a medical standpoint, I don't believe there's anything particularly evil about white flour or white sugar. your body metabolizes them in some similar ways that it metabolizes other whole foods. The main problem for me with having white flour and white sugar in my diet is that I cannot control myself. I can't control how much I eat. I've done all the things. I have weighed and measured. I have used the measuring spoons. I have a scale. I used to measure that stuff down to, the gram. It doesn't matter. My body goes, well, that was a great appetizer. Let's go do it again. How about some more? So I just decided that I would experiment with, I wonder if I won't want it as bad or what would happen if I just kind of began to avoid white flour and white sugar. And I have definitely found that my cravings for those items has definitely gone way down. This is not for everyone, but I personally don't really miss daily bread or daily pasta. That's not to say I never eat those things. Of course, I do eat those things sometimes, but they're not part of my daily rotation anymore. As far as sweets, I am not sorry about this, and I know I will probably get blowback, but I blatantly and unapologetically use non-calorie sweeteners. So what I mean is stevia, monk fruit, erythritol, allulose, and I have a little bit of that every day, really, because I like having a little treat, especially after dinner. I think my sort of semi-mandatory nighttime dessert, which is made with a non-caloric sweetener and without white flour, is one of the things that has made this feel unbelievably sustainable and like I'm not white knuckling it. I get to have a little something sweet every single night. I need to do a whole separate episode about that because there is some tricks to that nighttime dessert that have made it a tool for weight loss and not a tool for weight gain, which is previously for me what all healthy dessert recipes have been, because it doesn't matter how healthy the brownies are. If you eat 75% of the pan in one sitting, it's still too many calories. And that was totally me. So that I'm still doing. And then the other final thing, really, it's not the final, but one that I'm still sticking with is during all that metabolic upgrade, I moved dinner earlier because I was really eating a pretty big dinner and then going straight to bed. And I had some thoughts about my blood sugar being elevated when I went to bed at night. I decided to move dinner earlier and then, like a maniac, every night without missing, take a walk after dinner, even if it's only 10 minutes. Showing up for that walk activates still my body's natural muscle ability to suck glucose out of the bloodstream and into the muscle tissue. It's amazing. It's the best party trick ever. If you ever get to wear a continuous glucose monitor, you'll be amazed at what your body can do with a short walk after dinner. So that really stuck as a habit. Thankfully, I have a dog that helps me stick to that. So dinner earlier, walk every night, and the walk after every time you eat a meal is an unbelievably healthy habit for metabolic health. So if you've got prediabetes or diabetes and you are not at risk for low blood sugar episodes, and if it's okay with your healthcare provider, walking for a few minutes after every meal is phenomenal for blood glucose health. Really, really good for it. So thanks. I see you here. If you've got any questions, drop them in the chat. And I do want to touch really quick on probably one of the more important parts of how I've been able to keep this off. So everything I've told you right now, to be honest, you could have Googled it up. Like, this is not mysterious. None of this is brand spanking new. I learned all of those techniques from other scientists that I follow on YouTube or on social media or books of theirs that I have read. The part that to me has been the massive area of growth in keeping this postmenopausal weight loss off has not been those science points. It has been, yes, ma'am, lady, how do I get myself to do those things, right? I had heard before too, avoid white sugar and white flour. And I'm like, that's terrific. How do I get myself to do that? And I had really bought into the willpower myth, which is perpetuated by the diet industry, the fitness industry. And I'm sad to say the healthcare machine. If you've ever had a doctor or even a wonderful dietitian tell you, here are some things that you can do with your diet to help improve your weight loss or help your metabolic health. When you're sitting there in their office, you're like, that is a wonderful idea. The truth is probably not a ton of it's new to you. The problem is 5:15 p.m. The same person who thought it was a great idea, me, is now standing in the kitchen feeling, with like drool coming down my mouth as I'm standing in the pantry or the fridge looking for what I can gobble up to fulfill what need. I don't even know what I need to fill up. I just know that the desire to gobble and feel the pleasure of something at the end of a long day is really powerful, right? How do we get ourselves to do it? That was really my deep dive for the whole last year. And I learned so much about habit change. And one thing that I learned is the power of momentum. So, what do I mean by that? It's that starting out with all this big long list of 12 things that I just told you, I didn't start that way. I started with tiny, tiny things at one time, tiny things. And in fact, one of the more powerful methods that I've shared with patients and clients, I call it the 5 by 9 morning method. And it is this idea that by 4 p.m., I am completely done with being healthy. Sometimes even by noon, we are so exhausted with using our brains and using our willpower that even by noon, we can't do it anymore. So I made up a morning method that is till 9 a.m. I can't be healthy till 4. I can't be healthy till noon. Can I be healthy till 9 a.m.? Because I used to think I was waking up in the morning. I can be healthy until I put both feet on the floor and then it's over, right? Okay, let's extend it. Let's be healthy till 9 a.m. So this is 5 simple morning habits. And there is a freebie that I've made about this. It is in the show notes below. Click over there, put your email in, and you get the freebie immediately. And your brain is going to tell you that this is so lame. This is not near enough. That is actually perfectionism in disguise. And this whole I'm not doing enough is one main story that makes us quit on ourselves. So, the purpose of this little self DIY challenge is to help you get some momentum so that you can move on to bigger things like this long, probably somewhat intimidating list that I just went over with you on how I am keeping 25 pounds of menopause weight loss off. So grab that free handout below. And if you would like to see the original video that I posted several months back on the original things that I did to lose 25 pounds, that video is linked below too. I hope I see you back here next time for my next live. If you thought this was valuable, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. You'll be alerted the next time I go live and release new videos. Have a great one. Thanks.